Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. Today, I'm joined by Nadine Edmondson, who is Director of Product Marketing and GTM, our good friends Evaluagent. Nadine, it's great to have you on the show.
Hi, Martin. Thanks. Great to be here.
Now, you came on Get Out of Rap TV and did GoX and talked about some of the great things that Evaluagent are on, and Rob came on the other day, and you've got loads going on, loads of product development, loads of new initiatives, different ways of thinking about things, including NPS and just taking. It seems you're doing everything that a lot of us have always wanted to do, which is expanding. What does quality mean? And it should cross loads and loads of different things. But central in that, or central in a lot of discussions that people are having in the industry at the moment, is, of course, AI. You can't go anywhere without hearing about AI. And you were sharing with me just before we hit record an interesting interaction you had at an event, and I thought that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, sure. It was a funny one. So we recently attended CCW in Vegas, which was full of all the leading vendors in the AI and contact center space. And I actually had someone march up to me on the stand, and you get this quite a lot at events. People just sort of marching up to you very importantly and just demanding you tell them what you do. And I even had someone at Call and Contact Center Expo give me 30 seconds to get on his shortlist for a rerun of the show floor. Anyway, that's another story. Um, so this guy in CCW came up to me and he said, "Can you explain to me what you do? But if you use the word AI, I'm going to walk away." And I was like, okay, that's crazy. But I think it's reflective of a sentiment, not that nobody wants AI, because everybody wants AI, right?
Mm.
Everybody understands the huge benefits that AI can bring to an organization and to you as an individual in your role. But I think there's a bit of fatigue about companies just trying to sell AI. Like, oh, here's AI, it's so great, you need to buy it. And I think what they really want to understand now is, what outcomes are you going to derive for me from AI? And that's one of the things that is really unique about Evaluagent. We were founded by contact center experts, and every piece of development, every feature within the platform is really focused on how do we address a specific problem in the contact center. And we have simply, and I'm oversimplifying it here, but we have used AI to augment those use cases effectively. So every piece of AI implementation and development that we've done has had a clear goal against a specific known problem within the contact center to help, make people's lives easier, to make the contact centers more efficient, get more quickly to insights, understand what's going on, understand pain points, the areas that are really impacting customer experience in the wider contact center, to automate quality assurance, make that process quicker, more efficient, allow more time for coaching and feedback of agents and improve performance that way. And then, being able to share those insights with the wider business as well. So I think that's where it comes from. It's a fatigue of just being sold AI as almost a standalone product. People really want to understand now what they're going to get from the outcomes.
And it seems like you were face to face with the extreme end of what I guess a lot of us will sometimes think and feel around, whether it is at an event or whether it is even just scrolling through LinkedIn or your own news, not yours, but newsletters and things like that, where AI is that kind of it attracts a lot of attention, and it attracts, a webinar that has AI in the title will have more people attend than one that is talking about employee engagement or quality assurance or something like that. I think we all see that, and it can become a bit tiring, and it can lead to this fatigue you talk about. And this guy, he's gone past fatigue into anger. I wouldn't recommend that. But and do you think sitting behind that then is maybe a lack of understanding of what it is, what its uses are, and what you can do with it? What do you think sits behind some of this that we we'll all occasionally feel at times, I'm guilty myself of scrolling quite quickly. If the only hook is AI, then I'm less likely to spend time on it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think everyone accepts that we want AI, we need AI, that the gains you get from AI are undeniable. And we also see projects going for board sign off from a budget perspective, and it's almost like a tick box now. It's got AI in it, right? It doesn't really matter what it does, but it's got AI in it. Okay, so we see that, and well, it's interesting because Forrester released some research just this week actually about understanding of AI, particularly in senior executives and in decision makers, and the results were, I don't know if they were surprising, but shocking in some ways. I think what they did was they asked they posed them a series of statements around the capabilities of generative AI, and they just had to say if they were true or false, I believe. And somewhere between 75 and 80 or 85% of those across the different questions got them wrong. So I think it's quite worrying. 66% of those were decision makers as well. So yeah, I mean, maybe it is a case of not understanding the capabilities of the technology, but I think it's also linked to understanding how specific vendors are using the technology. I think one of the key parts is probably transparency from vendors about how they use AI in their technology, and that's a theme that we at Evaluagent have been very keen to pursue as we've launched new AI capabilities. So you mentioned that you'd spoken to Rob recently about the XNPS capabilities. Well, within the platform, you can see clearly a description of how that rating was derived by the Gen AI in the background. And you have the ability to correct that and to feed back on why it was wrong so that it can learn and improve. So I think that transparency from vendors in AI derived outcomes, and specifically how the AI is being used and what the use cases are and the ROI that people can expect from these kinds of investments is probably a key part of it as well.
And I've seen with for maybe you could take us through. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of hours actually with a colleague of yours, Chris Mounts, and we went through the kind of the AI that helps. I would say is a simplistic term, but it helps with the scoring, with doing a lot of the donkey work, and then allowing your experienced quality analyst to really focus in on, okay, it's highlighted some insight here, it's highlighted some other things you might want to look out. And does that talk to what you said at the outset, which is you guys have been very careful about and very transparent, but it's when you use it, it's to make things easier and it's to drive those kind of outcomes and insight. So you mentioned XNPS, but it also sits behind the actual scoring capabilities as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So we've got customers working with us on various different journeys towards adoption of AI. And again, that's something that we're really keen to partner with customers on because it's quite difficult to say, because many customers are in reality still using spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So coming off a spreadsheet to fully automated scoring is actually quite a big leap, and some aren't ready for it, to be honest. So yes, at one end of the spectrum, we can offer completely fully automated generative AI-based scoring. And there are different levels of human oversight you can layer over that as well, such as secondary compliance workflows. So if you want to auto score everything, but then have the ability to actually do checks on high risk calls or even high value calls to see what's really going well in the contact center and make sure that's transferred across to different agents, etc. You can do that to whatever level your organization is comfortable with. Conversely, you could also build AI and automation into existing human processes with the Evaluagent platform. So you can use analytics of every single conversation. So that can be insight topics, audio metrics, sentiment, XNPS, which we mentioned. You can use all of those insights gathered from every single conversation and use those to create automated QA workflows, and queue them into evaluators. So again, getting evaluators to the conversations that are really having an impact on customer
Mm,
experience in a
mm,
positive or negative way,
mm.
and making sure that their time for manual evaluation is used really effectively, to get to the training and coaching needs, and even the broader process issues that can be passed to the wider business. So yeah, different spectrum of AI usage we can support, depending on the customer's comfort level.
I think that's a really good point because you could take someone that is used to flying a single propeller plane and then give them the top of the range jet. They're probably gonna crash it. They're certainly not going to utilize all of the different capabilities that are there. They have to kind of work, or it might be more prudent to work up to that. I can from the demo, and it's once you've gone through this, it's very hard to let it go. But I can remember being a team leader, and part of my responsibility was doing the quality monitoring for my team. Now that meant plugging into our call recording, noting down the responses on paper, then taking that and adding that into an Excel spreadsheet. From that, thinking what coaching I needed to do, and being taken through your system. I was like a kid in a sweet shop because I was like, my God, if this had been around when I was a team leader at any level that you talk about through that kind of adoption sort of spectrum, it would have saved me so much time because so much of the time that I spent doing that, I could have been coaching. I could have been making people better. It seemed like it was counterintuitive that I spent more time finding out what I was going to do than actually doing the stuff that I needed to do.
Yeah, definitely. And we're definitely starting to see a shift in the QA leader and supervisor manager role. You know, with Evaluagent, there is much more time to do coaching and training. And that's the whole concept of the platform, really, is to make the process much more efficient, take away that manual
Mm,
overhead,
mm,
from those individuals, put at their fingertips the insights they need to develop coaching and training. Because you don't, it's difficult to, if you look at traditional processes, taking a relatively small sample size, you might not get a lot of an agent's calls, and they might not actually be highly representative of that agent's performance over time.
yeah,
It's
true.
the age old adage that, sometimes agents don't buy into QA processes because they feel like the worst call always gets picked, and then they
Mm,
get sort of
mm.
coached and trained on an off day. So, this gives you an aggregated view of the agent's performance over time, and you start to spot trends. So you might see that actually over all of the calls they've done, empathy is consistently an issue, and then you can make your coaching much more relevant and targeted, and say, look, I've noticed that this is a persistent issue in calls. Let's either send you on this training course, or let's do some coaching around this, and actually get to the crux of the issues in those calls, rather than taking one call that might have had a non-compliance issue or something just as a one-off, and that's not a persistent issue for that agent.
It's such a good point because I think anyone that's led teams can remember you sit down and you're going through your feedback with one of your team, and it turns out that the call that you've selected is one where they might have come back from lunch and had some uh, personal news at lunchtime that's meant that they're not in a great place, or it's the very last call that they take at the end of a long week. You know, your system allows to take that aggregated view of how they've shown up throughout the entire month rather than those calls that it is a bit of a lottery. I also like something you said, and that I've seen as well that is often overlooked, and that is the ability to take your top performers and really, really understand why they are top performers. And that's where I think the utilization of something like AI really comes into play. Because if you can kind of get these are the reasons why they're doing so well with our customers, and then you can take that and build that into your not just your coaching and feedback, but in your recruitment, your induction. the academy, all of those different things. So that kind of stuff I think is great.
Yeah, I agree. And when we spoke last time, Martin, we talked about sort of this transition um, to more high value, high stress calls
Mm,
for agents. As more of the sort of operational queries come in and get dealt with by more self-serve channels, actually your agents then get put on more demanding calls, which are more demanding of them. So yeah, to understand which agents are performing well and why becomes even more important, because the queries become more complex and the skill set needed is different as well. Dealing with complex queries, being responsive, digging into things, using initiative, become much more important than can you access this in the knowledge base type thing. So yeah, I think there's additional complexity coming into the contact center environment because of the shift in channels and different tech coming in.
Going back to your original point as well, do you find with both existing clients and those that are looking into working with you guys that is quite an early question about has it got AI?
um yes, I mean, they do want to understand, they definitely want to understand what AI we can provide, but it's more, what outcomes am I going to get
Mm,
from the AI? So they don't come in saying, "Can I buy some AI?" They come in saying, "How can you help me?
yeah.
I've got these problems." And they do tend to have a view of what they might want to move to. So auto QA, auto scoring, auto evaluating every single interaction is very appealing, because
Yeah.
as you rightly pointed out, you suddenly go from like sitting at your desk, potentially manually evaluating calls, to suddenly being able to scale the quality program across every single interaction coming in. I mean, that is an incredible change and
Mm,
transformation of the quality program. So
mm,
most of our customers come in with a sense of their strategic direction there, and where they
mm,
want to get to. But a lot of them are asking how, and we're getting a lot of questions as to, can I check this? I don't want to buy a black box. I want something that I can understand and validate and check and correct if necessary. Because
mm,
AI isn't infallible.
mm,
We all know that and accept that. So it's, how do you get the benefits of AI and the huge transformative effect of AI, but mitigate against some of the risk that there is with AI. And that's really the journey that we take customers on, is right. Let's figure out what your pain points are, what your goals are, and map those to our capabilities and outcomes, and go from there, really.
and I think as well, is it safe to say that rather than this replacing people that are doing evaluations, whether that is a dedicated QA team or your team leaders, it's more about freeing them up to be able to be more effective. I can remember working with a head of contact center who was really frustrated that he felt like his QA team, who were very experienced, very knowledgeable, had probably had a better understanding of the interactions between the company and their customers than anyone else, but they spent all of their time with their head down, going going through the process of doing the evaluations rather than being able to be used to work on projects about how we can improve our service, or how can we improve our sales, or how can we improve our training. And so with that in mind, is that one of the things that people are surprised about, that actually this isn't you're never purporting it to be a complete replacement. It's more like it enhances their capability and the use of their time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's all about time efficient. It's doing less with more, I would
Mm,
say, because
mm,
things haven't changed. Contact centers are working against a shifting dynamic in the background. There's usually increased volumes of interactions coming in, but there isn't increased budget or increased headcount to scale the quality management program around that. So to summarize, I think most of our customers are looking to do more with less and use
mm,
AI in order to do that. But interestingly, a trend that we're also starting to see is how can we better use digital agents alongside human agents to augment the customer experience, and do that in a way that to do that in a way that is maybe addressing some of the concerns and the media coverage around how poor chatbots have been in the past, or some of the awful examples we've got of people using digital agents to buy cars for $100, those kinds of stories. How do we quality manage digital agents in the same way we do human agents? And that is also a trend that we're starting to see. So yeah, I think there's a lot going on in contact centers at the moment, and it really is how do we use the tech to do more, be more efficient, but get better outcomes as well, because there have been some high profile examples of tech deployments that have failed to deliver any significant ROI, despite the fact that it's been AI, quote unquote. It's how do you use AI effectively to make sure that you're actually getting something meaningful out of the software, that you're actually addressing your strategic goals, whatever they might be as an organization, and making the right tech choices in that regard.
Mm. And does that mean that's the starting point then for anyone that, and those could be your existing clients, but also any new clients that come, it's to really understand what those strategic goals are and the tactical deployment of them?
Yeah, that's exactly where we always start. What are you looking to achieve here? What are your pain points? What are your struggles? What are your constraints? And yeah, build that out into a set of goals that we can work collectively on as a partnership, software supported. So for us, it's not just a sale of the tech, the
Mm.
features. It's mapping those to what the organization's trying to achieve.
And for some, that you mentioned it earlier, but um, if people haven't seen Rob talk about XNPS, what is that?
So it's effectively a predictive predictive NPS score. So we're all familiar. I feel like we've been talking about this for way too many years, but
Yeah.
there are well-known, well-understood limitations of NPS surveys. You typically only get low response rates, and they're at very opposite ends of the spectrum
Mm.
in terms of positive experiences and negative experiences. But it's a metric, right? It's something that
Mm.
contact centers can hang their hats on. They can show improvement on. They can show going backwards on, and then take potentially preventative action against that. And this is a KPI that goes to board level typically, so it's an important one despite its limitations. What we're trying to do with our XNPS feature, which stands for expected NPS, is effectively evaluate every conversation using generative AI, with generative AI acting as a typical customer. So establishing and predicting what the likely NPS score would be if the customer completed a survey post interaction. So suddenly you go from that kind of feedback, from just a small sample of customers, to it on every single interaction. And we're doing a lot of testing at the moment, and we're actually getting about 85% accuracy against AI based outcomes versus the on the ground responses that live customers are getting. So you suddenly get access to this
Yeah.
breadth of data across the whole of your contact center data. So it just gives you a lot more to go on in terms of trend analysis, and tying that back also then using conversational analytics to the issues that are impacting that XNPS score. If it's a detractor score, then you can go and evaluate those calls again at scale and work
Mhm.
out, okay, well, clearly there's an issue with the online self-serve tool or whatever it might be, and start to take corrective actions at scale that are really going to move the needle.
I think that's fascinating because it gives you the ability to undertake the activity of NPS without any of the challenges that people are facing. Because in the team leader community that I run, there's senior leaders in there as well. And yesterday there was someone that was taking a new role, heading up a contact center, and they really want to understand from their customers how they can improve their service. Their current NPS and CSAT scores are low, uh, and they're very positive about it, like because they're like, right, this is a great place for us to start because we're going to go on a mission to take this up. Their biggest challenge is their customers are suffering from survey fatigue,
Hmm.
and their sample size is low. The customers that they do get, they can be not dismissive, but yeah, okay, I'll do it. That I'll do the survey. So they're not getting a great amount of data to be able to make a positive difference. They don't see that as they're not going to use it as a vanity metric. They really want to use customer feedback to be able to make some changes. But the customers are at that point where, look, you've given us these surveys time and time again. So am I right in thinking this would be a way that would that through that expected score? And I'm assuming you guys think if it's, what did you say, 85 or 88? 85.
85.
So if it's 85 now, it's only going to get more accurate the more
Right.
you carry on testing it and working with your clients on it. That would be something where they could do that and then still go out to customers if they needed to through forum groups and the traditional methods, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good comparison, isn't it? If you keep
Yeah.
both going together, but I think ultimately we see XNPS as a replacement for traditional processes. I mean, I think you're right. It's survey completion is, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm completing surveys, I tend to do the tick box ones. And as soon as there's like an open text box, I'm like, oh, I haven't got time for that.
Yeah.
So you're not getting really any
No,
qualitative input.
no.
And you might get more of that on a forum, or anything that's just people will take the time to discuss things in more detail, or face to face sort of user groups, and things like that. But if you think about calls or any interaction coming into the contact center, you're likely to get a huge amount of feedback on the call. So if somebody's calling in to complain about something, they're probably going to have a bit of a rant and a rave about what exactly the issue is and the struggles they're facing. So that's a gold mine of information, isn't it? In terms of improvement
Mm,
actions, you can really understand what's going on and go and have a dig around and work out how to fix it. Whereas a survey is probably just is going to tell you whether they're likely to recommend you moving forward.
mm.
It's not particularly useful as a metric or as an improvement action.
And that the output of that sit alongside the QA, or is separate, or can you see some crossover between the two? Because I think that's always an interesting comparison, is what is our internal quality score telling us versus any kind of customer satisfaction score.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's a really interesting comparison. I mean, we actually tie conversation intelligence to the quality management process directly, and we do that by performing the analytics of every single conversation and then using that to filter conversations effectively. So that's how you would get to those must monitor buckets, those
Mm,
high risk, high value interactions. So you could use XNPS score, for example, to create buckets of conversations that are high or low scorers so that they can become the priority for human evaluators. Or if you're doing the auto scoring, you're right, you can use the dashboards and insights to compare and contrast the difference in those scorecard based metrics and then the customer feedback. So yeah, it's a really interesting time, I think. And that's our dashboards are really highly configurable so that you can drag and drop the different metrics in as you want to see them as a stakeholder in the business, because obviously as different stakeholders you have different requirements of the data. So yeah, we try to be as flexible as possible with those reporting capabilities so that you can do that comparison.
now something like that exercise before, which I've done myself, that kind of, well, let's look at our internal QA scores versus our um, the customer satisfaction scores that we're getting, and the methodology. You go into the methodology that's used, the questions that we're asking both customers and that we're using in our scorecards, and also that the point of the journey where the customer was at was different anyway. So you had these two different data sets, different parameters being used to analyze them, and it took a long, long time. What you're talking about is something that is there in front of you and that you can interrogate, and that it's also pointing out to you some of the areas that you may want to go out and look at with your team.
Yeah, definitely. I think you make another interesting point there, in that a customer may have a different um, score or piece of feedback at different points of their journey with the
Yeah.
organization. So when they first, if they have a negative interaction with a chatbot, for example, they're going to score. They're going to be a detractor most likely. But then as they move through the journey and actually they get help and they get their query dealt with, that might actually shift. So it's also really important to connect the interactions
Mm.
through that customer journey, and not just take a spot check of one particular action. I mean, that's not to say you shouldn't go back and fix the chatbots, but I think it is also important to understand the customer journey and sentiment across that.
Mm. Especially when you think how our world has become more complex as we've met the differing needs of customers and how they wish to interact. Bringing all of that together, it is practically impossible if you're not getting some help from technology.
Yeah, it is really challenging. Um, and it's so important, because that can make such a huge difference to the customer experience. Most customers just want their query resolved as quickly as possible, but we've talked before about complexity and highly complex queries, and how they're better handled potentially by a human agent. But equally, people just want easy access to address fairly bog standard or day to day queries, like you know checking your bank balance and things like that. No one wants any what's the word, friction
Yeah.
in handling basic queries. So I think most people, if you can get it done via a chatbot or an online tool of some sort or any other digital tool, I think most people are quite happy to do that. It's only when it becomes more complex that actually maybe they want to speak to a human on occasion.
Do you, just a complete random question here, because you started with your story of being in Vegas at Contact Center World. Do you see any real differences between the markets in terms of either customers or potential clients between US and UK?
Um, I mean, I initially thought, before we went to CCW, that actually the US contact centers might be slightly more mature and maybe a bit further along with adoption of AI and automation. That isn't necessarily the impression I got at CCW. We still spoke to a lot of really large clients still on spreadsheets.
Mm.
Some were more advanced, absolutely, but yeah, there still seems to be quite a big, you know, move for contact centers to make around adopting AI and automation. And a lot of the conversations we were having were with people that were just frustrated with manual processes and looking for alternative solutions to help them with that. But again, there was that level of fear of making the wrong decision or bringing in something that was actually a significant spend that didn't generate the ROI that they were looking for. And that came across quite persistently as well. We've used this, we've been using it for years. We don't really want to change our scorecards because that's bedded into agent commission structures. And how can you help us take us to the next level here, using AI and automation, but in a way that I can understand, and that I can oversee, because they still want to retain some control, which is really important when you're making such a big investment.
I think it's fascinating as well, and goes back to the first point we were talking about, is if every headline is AI, 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 you can assume that everyone already has it. But if you go through any of like contact Babel stats and things like that, and always kind of zero in on some of the QA stuff, you're right. I think it was the last one I saw from their decision makers guide was something like 50% are still putting everything into Excel. But I look at that as a positive because it means if they can start adopting some of this technology like yours, then we're going to be able to give a better service and see our industry in a better light. And we'll also be exposing our teams to technology that's interesting, that's exciting, and that may be just because I was a bit of a geek about it with going through your demo, but I don't think that's necessarily, and it's a bad thing. It's just opportunity, right?
I agree. And I think there's such a huge opportunity for contact centres to take advantage of this technology. And there's so much that can be done with it. I mean, even just suddenly being able to analyze every single interaction that's coming in just unlocks a whole world of insight that you can use right through to time savings and efficiencies around the QA process. But I think the other piece is around agent engagement,
Mm.
and agent retention. Yeah, that's also a persistent problem in contact centres. And we've already talked today about agent buy-in to the QA process, and perhaps it's sometimes being perceived as a tick box exercise or unfair, not representative. I think this gives contact centres an opportunity to get agents much more bought into the whole process and even take ownership of some of their own learning and development.
Yeah.
A customer said to me the other day, I don't really want to talk about it as training agents. We train agents when we onboard them. We tell them what the processes are. They know how to do the job. I want to switch to personal development and coaching.
Mm.
I thought that was a really nice way to put it, because
Yeah.
it's not just about teaching them to follow processes. It's about
Mm.
um, you know developing different skills and coming back to those complex queries and how to deal with those. It's about expanding that skill set and making them much better at handling those, and empowering them, because a motivated employee is certainly one that feels empowered and that they're doing a good job. So there's the buy-in piece, but then there's also the gamification capabilities that we have in the Evaluagent platform, which are being really well received. And that really just injects a bit of fun and competition into the whole process. So we have leaderboards so people can see how they're performing against their colleagues. They can earn badges, which can be completely customized by the organization, so in line with their brand or their culture. They can earn points, and then those can be bidded to win, like an eBay style auction, to win prizes. So it just creates a bit more positivity, ownership, and fun around the whole QA process, which I think again is a big shift change for a lot of contact centres and can bring a whole host of benefits.
Oh, as talking as a ex-agent, team leader, and someone that worked in QA, anything that helped, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but anything that helped you see your work from a different perspective, that's something that there were consequences, and by that I mean if I'd done well, that it would be recognized somewhere,
Yeah,
not necessarily pound amount, but that's where gamification comes in. It lets you kind of have perspective about your role, have some fun, get into competition, but in a friendly way. I think it's great. There was something else I was thinking about with your platform as well, is that it naturally raises the standards of coaching and team leaders, because I know myself, if you had a very experienced agent and your scorecard hadn't changed very much over the years, the scorecard kind of restricted you to be able to say one thing or another. And I know this happens because I did it myself. You would sit with an experienced agent and say, yeah, everything was fine. Sign, this is this
yeah,
we've done it, sign there if you were signing it or whatever. Whereas now the data you get and the way that it's presented allows you to really, really fine tune and work with someone to, I love that about personal development, about how they might want to use language and maybe how they can deploy emotional intelligence a bit better and their listening skills, because you've got so much more to work with. Even if your scorecard's quite static, it's going to give you areas to look at. So you have to raise your game as a coach. You have to raise your game as a team leader. And again, I think that's to the betterment of agent experience and agent retention.
I agree, and there's a couple of points I'd make there. The first one is that's another good use case for AI that we've deployed, in that we actually provide AI-based coaching tips to the leader,
Love it.
to the manager. So again, a time efficiency, a time saver. You
Yeah.
don't have to trawl through everything. You don't have to agree with the coaching tips. Obviously, you can go back and change them and correct them, but it gives you a head start there as to what's been noted in the call that could be possible areas for coaching and development. I think the other piece we see a lot now is that it also gives the agents their own ability to evaluate their performance.
Mm.
And when you get that level of insight in your own performance, you actually are naturally more inclined to take corrective actions. So if you see that, you get a write up that a call's gone bad, you get a score, you can see your own scores, you can see your own evaluations. When you see that and you see the points that it's addressed, you can actually think, oh, okay, well, actually, I hadn't noticed I was doing that. So now in the next call, I can take my own corrective action. So
Hmm.
it's not all on the manager to do the coaching and
Yeah,
training. The agent actually uses some of their own initiative to improve.
it's brilliant. Where can people find you? Where can people come and continue this kind of conversation?
Absolutely. So we're at evaluagent.com is our website. So you can hop on there, and there's various different mechanisms to get in touch. There's also product tours if you want to go and have a look around the platform before you reach out to us.
And are you still you doing a world tour after Vegas? Where's it going to?
No, I'm not sure where I'm going next. Actually, I think we might have a couple of more US ones coming up, but no, we're at Call and Contact Center Expo in November. So yeah, if anybody's coming along to that, definitely come and find us, come and see us. Yeah, lots going on. We've also got some more masterclasses kicking off in after the summer. Gets a bit quiet over the summer with everybody going on holiday. But we will be picking up the masterclasses in September. We're actually, I think one of the first ones is in partnership with DeepGram,
Mm.
who are a leading transcription provider. Just talking a bit about the benefits of transcription, the importance of accuracy, and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, come to evaluagent.com and sign up for our marketing communications if you want to get details of that when we announce it.
I would 100% recommend the masterclasses and also get a tour, because whether you're a senior leader, you're interested in QA, coaching, any of that, you'll love it. You'll absolutely love it. But Nadine, we'll have to do this again, and maybe we can share more kind of expo type stories that started this whole conversation off. But if we do it again, no doubt you'll have moved more stuff even further on. But I'm loving what you're doing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks very much.